Tonight, we'll take a walk through a jack-o'-lantern maze on All Hallows Eve. Before we begin, take some time to get comfortable. Settle into bed just the way you like it. Release the weight of your head, allowing the pillow to support it completely. Close your eyes and notice a sense of calmness wash over you. Scan your body from head to toe, taking account of how everything feels. Now, breathe in deeply. And as you exhale, notice how the sensations of your body fall quiet. Breathe in again. And out, expelling everything good, bad, and in between. Stillness is all that remains. Let your mind drift to a crisp October day. You're following a path through the woods. The trees are bursting with colors of autumn, creating a canvas of red, yellow, orange, and brown, as far as the eye can see. One of these leaves falls from the branch of a tree above your head. You watch it tumble down, swirling gently around your feet before coming to rest on the ground. A light breeze picks up the leaf and tosses it ahead of you down the path. You follow it, winding through the woods. All around you, hemlock, birch, and maple trees stand tall. Here in the woods, the things that make fall stand out from other times of year are particularly apparent. The air is fresh and light on your skin now that the heat of summer is gone. There is a distinct earthy smell in the breeze. The sounds are different too. The increasingly bare trees have a more staccato rustle, complemented by the crunch of leaves beneath your feet. The path comes to an end at the edge of the woods. Ahead of you is a picturesque New England town. In this town lives a pumpkin carver named Cain. And this is where our story begins. Cain sits on a window seat in the kitchen of his small townhouse. In front of him is a wide wooden table with pumpkins of all shapes, sizes, and colors sitting atop it. It's Halloween. And Cain has work to do. After all, he's one of the best pumpkin carvers around. This is the season for his craft, especially in this little town. For several days in a row, he's gone to a special pumpkin market held in the town center, where dozens of vendors filled their stalls with every kind of pumpkin imaginable. These pumpkins are special. They will illuminate the annual jack-o'-lantern maze at the edge of town. It's what this place is known for. Every Halloween, people from far and wide come to see it. This year, at the market, there were even more varieties than usual. Of course, there were the standard jack-o'-lantern pumpkins, weighing 8 to 15 pounds, shining in the classic orange color with thin ribbing down their sides. These are what most people learn to carve on. Cain learned on one such pumpkin many years ago. When he was a boy, his mother took him to the famous pumpkin market and let him pick out his very own to carve. He chose a 9-pound pumpkin. Its surface was waxy and smooth, except for a tiny yellow and green mark just below the stem. It made for a unique and special first jack-o'-lantern. Being a kid, he kept it simple and decided to carve a smiling face. He cut a circle around the stem and lifted off the top like a lid. He still remembers the first smell of the pumpkin, fresh and sweet, with an earthy undertone. He put his small hand inside and pulled out all of the seeds and pulp. With a spoon, he carefully scraped away the last bits and pieces from the inside. His mother separated the seeds from the pulp, washed the seeds, and set them aside to dry. Once they were dry, she toasted them in the oven. It was Cain's favorite fall snack as a child. This year's market also had Howden pumpkins. At 25 to 50 pounds apiece, they look like larger versions of their standard jack-o'-lantern cousins. These make magnificent statement pieces. One large Howden can turn a front porch into a Halloween masterpiece. Cain carved a 30-pounder a few years ago. It had an intricate scene. There was a witch on a broom, flying over a little New England town. At the edge of town, there was a pumpkin maze full of tiny jack-o'-lanterns, flickering in the night. It was a small version of his own town. It was so creative and precisely carved that he won an award for it. He brought it back home after Halloween with a ribbon around its stem. "Best in show," the ribbon proclaimed. Cain was proud of that one. Miniature pumpkins were also among the selection at this year's market. There were orange jack-be-littles and a pile of white baby boos that looked like tiny ghosts. There were small gourds with funny names like Hooligan, Gooligan, and Bumpkin. Their skin was both smooth and bumpy. They came in the traditional orange as well as white and mottled yellow. Then there were the exceptionally colorful pumpkins, the Jarradels, 6 to 10 pounds, sharply ribbed with a deep teal blue skin. Right next to the Jarradel stand was one with blue dolls. They are large, like the Howdens. They also have deep ribbing, but are boxy with flatter, taller sides. Blue dolls are named for their waxy, light blue skin. These blue pumpkins could give a mysterious edge to any Halloween display, whether carved or not. Cinderella pumpkins were next. Being enormous, bright orange, and flat, it's easy to imagine a fairy tale character riding to a ball inside of one. They often weigh up to 35 pounds, making them one of the largest commonly sold varieties. Kane did a Cinderella pumpkin last year. True to the name, his carving featured a princess, a tiny glass shoe, and mice. But the actual fairy tale pumpkins were Kane's favorite this year. They had been picked at just the right time. One of them immediately caught Kane's eye. It was as though the pumpkin had chosen him, rather than the other way around. It's the pumpkin that sits in front of Kane right now, in the center of his kitchen table, waiting to be carved. This fairy tale pumpkin is well suited for its name. It has dark orange skin with a hint of red, and it's tinged with light brown near the stem. Deep ribs line the outside. The color fades from orange to bluish green at the innermost lines of the ribbing, accentuating their depth. On this pumpkin, Kane will attempt the most incredible carving feat yet. He's going to create a piece that repeats within itself. Something never seen before at the great jack-o'-lantern maze. He starts with a pencil and carefully begins to sketch the faint outline of a carriage on the pumpkin's waxy skin. It's an old-fashioned carriage, pulled by 4 mighty horses. The sides are lined with studs and carved wooden designs. But the real intrigue lies in what Kane isn't sketching: a rider. This carriage is riderless. No one tells the horses where to go. Attached to the top left corner of the carriage is a hook. Normally, this would carry a lantern to light the carriage's way, but instead of a lamp, it holds a jack-o'-lantern. And on the face of this jack-o'-lantern is the very same carriage, with a smaller jack-o'-lantern hanging from its hook, and on that jack-o'-lantern goes an even tinier carriage, and so on, until Kane can't carve any smaller. With the outline sketched, Kane gets to the real work. First, he cuts the top off and removes the insides. Once his work is done, he'll toast the seeds just like his mother used to. Then, he cuts away lines for the top and sides of the carriage and makes the outline of each horse. With every cut of the knife, the now hollow pumpkin creates an earthy vibration. Kane loves that sound. He uses a smaller tool to detail the horses' manes, which fall in gentle waves across their backs. With extreme precision, he manipulates the tip to design the wooden edges of the carriage and dot the frame with the shapes of metal studs. Then he picks up an even finer tip tool. With this, he carves the pumpkin lantern. On its face, He uses the smallest movements of his fingertips to carve the same scene over again. Then he moves to the tiniest tool he has. The point is so fine, it's like a sewing needle. He uses this to make the smallest carriage with a little jack-o'-lantern of its own. Cain uses great care to bring such miniature designs to life. His hand is steady like a surgeon's. His breath slows to calm his body and focus his mind. That's why Cain loves pumpkin carving. He loses himself in it. He's completely focused. The more he becomes entranced with each detail, the calmer and more creative he becomes. Usually, the result is something magnificent. Once he finishes the final jack-o'-lantern, he sits back and inspects his work. It might just be his finest yet. He looks at the clock above the kitchen sink. It's been hours since he started carving. Evening has arrived. It's time to see the creation the way it's meant to be seen. Cain stands up and walks over to the door. With a flick of the light switch, the room goes dark. Only a few dim shadows reach across the room from the streetlights outside. He picks up a matchbox laying on the edge of the kitchen table. He pushes the box open and retrieves a small match, which he strikes on the side of the box. A flame bursts from the head of the match, bringing with it a familiar smell. He picks up a small white candle and holds the match against the wick. It takes on the flame, which melts the wax around the wick. Cain places the candle inside the pumpkin, making sure it sits flat on the bottom. Then he fits the top snugly in place. The soft light of the candle illuminates the deep red inside of the pumpkin. Fairy tale pumpkins are darker in color than standard pumpkins. Lit from the inside, their flesh shines somewhere between a candy apple and a rose. The riderless carriage burns bright. The horses gallop with the flickering of the light. The tiny jack-o'-lantern seems to swing gently as the carriage sways down its path. It's perfect, Cain thinks. The best he's ever done. He blows the candle out with a soft breath. A winding trail of smoke fills his nostrils as the pumpkin goes dark. It's time to head to the maze. Cain puts on his coat, picks up the pumpkin, and holds it firmly under his arm. He pockets the matchbox and a few extra candles, just in case. With his free arm, he shuts the door behind him with a click. The town's quaint streets have a unique radiance this evening. Passers-by try to get a look at his latest creation. He's well known around town. Over the years, he's become a cherished Halloween artist. He lets a few kids catch a glimpse of the design, but otherwise shields it with his spare hand. He grins and keeps walking confidently. They'll just have to wait for the maze, he thinks to himself. He walks through the town square and looks up at the clock tower overhead. It's nearly 7 o'clock. The sun has dipped down below the horizon, and dusk is falling on this little town. Just past the square, the street gives way to a clearing at the edge of the woods. But tonight, the clearing isn't all grass and leaves. Instead, it's filled with jack-o'-lanterns, their tiny lights flickering in the darkness. The maze begins where the pavement meets the grass. 2 tall pumpkin soldiers guard the entrance. They are each made of 3 pumpkins stacked one on top of the other. The topmost pumpkins bear stoic expressions. This year, Cain's jack-o'-lantern will stand at the very center of the maze near the bowl of candy, which rewards all who make it that far. Cain starts off down the path. Each row of the maze features a different category of carvings. First comes all the classic faces: smiles, frowns, narrow eyes, and laughing eyes, some with teeth and some without. He turns right at the end of the row. This brings him to the animals. These pumpkins bear the faces of lions and elephants. One depicts a raven in flight. Another has an owl silhouette in the face of the moon. And just past one with a flamingo and palm trees, Cain turns left. This row has the stories. Each pumpkin here tells a tale. The ribs of the pumpkin separate the scenes. Dramas play out one wedge after another. A child's first day at school, a vampire in a castle high on a hill. There are comic book characters saving the day and famous moments in history. He takes a left after the moon landing and finds himself in the row of abstract designs. The pumpkins here come in many forms. Some have intricate faces. One has a large piece removed, making it look like a giant apple with a bite taken out. Another, with hundreds of tiny holes, looks like the night sky. One with slanted lines makes Cain pause for a moment. It seems as though the pumpkin has been sliced all the way through. He doesn't know how it's still standing. Impressive, he thinks, as he continues on. Here he goes left, right, then left again, and continues straight into rows of pumpkins smaller than the rest. They all have holes in the front. Their uniformity signals this is the end of the maze. At the end of the row stands a pedestal, wrapped in light strands glowing in orange and white. There's room for the candy bowl and one final jack-o'-lantern. Cain pulls the large pumpkin out from under his arm and places it gently on top. He adjusts it so the design faces the final path. Anyone walking up will see the carriage in full profile. With the light of a match, his work comes to life. He pauses for a moment. Here, at the center of the maze, Stretching out before him on all sides are hundreds of jack-o'-lanterns. Their bright flames flicker in the autumn breeze. It's quiet. There's calm now before the maze opens. Cain smiles. This is his favorite time of year. He's always amazed by the skill and creativity on display here. Meanwhile, night has arrived. The air is getting cooler. The sky is full of stars. The moon rests just above the tree line at the edge of town. He treats himself to one small candy from the bowl, something sweet to chew on, as he weaves his way back out of the maze. When he exits between the pumpkin guards at the start, he passes the first child making her way into the maze. The line stretches back into town, filled with children who can't wait to brave the maze, look at all the pumpkins, and find the candy at the center. He wishes them luck as he passes. He'd stay and watch the fun, but it's been a long day. Halloween is a different kind of holiday for a pumpkin carver. For Cain, it's a time to enjoy his skill and passion and admire the work of other creators. And what a maze it was this year. He walks back through the town square, past the clock tower and the shops, all closed for the night. It's quieter now than before. He walks up the street. Some of the houses have jack-o'-lanterns of their own, inviting trick-or-treaters to the door. He opens his door and hangs his coat on the rack. After a change of clothes, he lays down in bed, grateful for how soft it feels after a long day's work. He stretches and lets out a yawn. He didn't realize how tired he was. With the vision of jack-o'-lanterns still flickering in his mind, he drifts off to sleep.